the Gospel is very familiar to us. In fact, in the Confucian Rite in which I was brought up, it was part of the nightly office of Our Lady, which was said Matins before Matins of the day in church, and then Lords after Lords of the day at midnight. This Gospel came in on a nightly basis, starting therefore the 24-hour periods with Our Blessed Lady, and also with the angelic realm, a realm which occasionally breaks through, and something also which can be augmented insofar as the angels seem to be all the more active in proportion to our invoking them and being aware of them. Just yesterday, by chance, I had a lovely travelling family with me of great simple faith, and this good lassie, the young mother, came up with this story in the midst of our conversation. It was something linked with modern means, closed-circuit television. Now, what had happened apparently was this. This little lassie of about 16 was walking home through a shortcut which went through a deserted area from some event with other people in her town. And at a certain point she became aware of danger, and she was not at all at ease. She saw this gentleman ahead of her and started to invoke with great intensity her own guardian angel. Interesting, at the age of 16. The importance, therefore, of transmitting this message to children when they're still open. And carried on walking, not paying heed deliberately to this gentleman who was eyeing her on the side. And she got home safely. Not long afterwards came another lassie of about the same age along the same shortcut, and this same gentleman went for her. And I don't know the details of what he did exactly, but the end of the story was, at the end of the treatment, she was on the other side of eternity. But it had all been recorded on closed-circuit television, and therefore the Gardaí investigated all the footage, and they found that it was the same gentleman who was present all along on the side of the road, but he had not done anything in the case of the first. And because of this footage, they knew exactly who he was, and they caught him and interrogated him and wanted to know exactly why he had not done anything in the first case but had in the second. And he just answered, well, there was a man behind you in the first case. How could I? So they got on to the girl herself, the survivor, and asked her who this man was. There was no man. It was my own. That's why I was so afraid. I just invoked my guardian angel with great intensity. So the Gardaí kept their peace, but the story came out. And other similar stories I've heard, the angels, when invoked, do come in on the job. They're on side, and they are very much concerned for that personal bit of humanity which is entrusted to them on an individual basis. And perhaps one of the great sadnesses they have is that they're not even thought about by the vast majority of humankind. Maybe it has happened to you as well in the case of, e.g., what could have been a lethal accident. One comes across these things quite frequently, that there are inexplicable escapes from things which really, humanly speaking, were hopeless. But then it is. And some actually wouldn't believe it again, have been caught, strange forms have been caught on video. And just the other day I happened to come across an interesting testimony of an American about your age who was, like yourself, a handyman, and because of that much used. And he had always said yes when asked for a favour, and this gentleman was in trouble with his truck, but it was a big truck, very heavy, so it wasn't working and there was something underneath, and the other man knew exactly what was wrong, so we had to go underneath and have a look. So the whole of this weight was falling on just this jack, but the jack gave in, so the whole of this weight came down upon him, and the pain was something else, and his soul was leaving his body, and from outside his body he could see what was going on. And I think it's all on YouTube, but the details I forget, but what is clear is that there is, and he sees it, two forms of strong men holding up the weight. They're two angels, and he's given outside his body the choice of coming to heaven because he was a good Christian, a fervent Christian soul, or because he had a family, going back but suffering. And he chose immediately to come back, but it would be a long struggle, he knew that. And then, because he was surrounded by Christian friends, they prayed over him in a very intense and powerful way, and there was miraculous, huge acceleration of a pretty well impossible healing process, so that things came together very quickly and the doctors just couldn't understand. And now he goes around giving his testimony. But then there are other interventions of angels, and this comes back to the Gospel, where the angel is a herald, a messenger, malachi. It's the Hebrew notion coming into the Greek. Angelein is to announce. The evangel is the good announcement, the good news. And these people, souls, not souls, spirits, are in some way to be found also in the form of human souls, angels for us. And even events. The abbot, one time in France, going back years now, I was very impressed by the abbot that I was first encountering there in 1974 at La Trappe, a holy man who could, in the morning, in chapter, every morning there'd be a chapter, and on weekdays, and he would give a homily each morning, which would be enough for us for the day, but just for us, it was very intense therefore. And one of them was this, the bell. And he was explaining that the bell is the angel. Even the electric bell, which is the forewarning of the big bell, it's also the angel, and therefore one obeys the angel. And there are angels in our life. They can be letters, they can be people knocking at our door, they can be phone calls, they can be texts, they can be events. And I happened to pick up just recently this which came through the post, which in a sense sums it all up, because the angels of God can be events, and God is not absent from events in the life of a Christian soul. If we yield to that temptation, that is believing that we're forgotten and abandoned, as though the machine worked on and God was not actually in ultimate control, that it is temptation really against the fullness of our faith, which has to be personal. God is not a machine, and neither are we. And we have the teaching given to us in the Gospel of St. Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount. Remember that we are not less important than the animals, the sparrows, but even the hairs of our head are counted. How much more, you of little faith? So this testimony comes through to show how the Lord is not absent from those who gamble upon him in true faith for his glory and for the salvation of souls. That's important. The motivation has to be that. It has to be pure. Otherwise we're tempting providence. Now this specifically one, it comes from the story of the founding of EWTN as we know it, which obviously was a work which God was inspiring on the inside by inspirations to Mother Angelica, who was receiving them, of course, by the full Blessed Sacrament, to which was very much orientated and devoted, but also in the way in which, on the external level, things were coming into place. So, I'll just read some of this. Recently, says this person, I met someone from EWTN, and he related this true story to me. He told me that when Mother Angelica was just starting up EWTN, she had some huge satellite dishes delivered, but she had no money to pay for them. She asked the truck driver to unload the satellite dishes, and she would send the money on as soon as she found it. Mother was of course profoundly confident that she would find the money. However, the truck driver said, "Look, Mother, I have strict orders that these need to be paid for." He wanted $50,000 before he would unload them, or he would take them back. Mother Angelica desperately wanted these dishes so that she could start to transmit her programs. So she tried very hard to persuade the driver to leave them, but with no luck. The driver still said no. She asked him to wait for a little while, and she went there to pray before the Blessed Sacrament. The truck driver said, "Okay." He probably thought he could do with a break from this negotiation. After praying for half an hour or so, there was still no answer, and no plan came into her head. So she went out again to have another go at persuading the driver. So she was starting to talk with him once again. And just then, one of the sisters came running out saying that Mother was wanted on the phone. So she said she couldn't come at that moment because the matter that she was handling was just too important. So the sister went back and gave that reply to the person at the end of the phone, asking the person to call back. But the caller said he would hang on. So the sister came out to Mother Angelica again, saying the man is hanging on. And he is ringing from a yacht in the Caribbean. So Mother pleads with the driver to wait for a few minutes, hoping to come back and continue with her efforts to persuade him. The man on the phone was a Catholic multi-millionaire who was impressed by some of Mother's booklets and literature, and he wanted to make a donation to Mother's work and that of the sisters. Mother Angelica said, "You don't happen to have $50,000, do you?" The millionaire said, "Yes. When do you want it?" Mother said, "You couldn't transfer it now, could you? You see, I have these satellite dishes in a truck outside, and the man won't leave them until he's paid." The millionaire said, "Sure, I will get on to my bank right away." Mother goes back out to the truck driver, tells him she has the money, and where should she transfer it. The driver gives her the instructions. Mother Angelica gives them to the millionaire, that is the instructions. The truck driver then gets into, that is by mobile phone, onto the headquarters of his firm and finds that everything is paid for. He is stunned and unloads the dishes. Concludes, this is a true story, just shows the power of prayer. Now, what is important there is that the motives were pure. And we have to be aware that we, if we're in the Lord's work, are somehow handling divine power and wisdom combined. But he does, on our part, ask us to be responsible in such a way that he is able to be the one who is the prime mover. Things get out of hand when that ceases to be the case, when we presume upon providence, behave irresponsibly, and take initiatives which are not being prompted by the Holy Ghost. So the whole equilibrium goes awry. It's important, but when actually the other is true, things do happen. And there are actually some very moving testimonies on YouTube of things like this taking place, when precisely it is the motive of only helping and doing the Lord's work. I've seen more than one fairly recent YouTube of people, again about your age, who are very much engaged in the Lord's work. One would be a testimony of, for instance, food miraculously coming all the time in a very poor area, all the time, coming physically, being multiplied out of just the same quantity. And the other of clothes, jumpers coming out and all the rest with the same, from the same bag, being created on the spot inexplicably, but it's all there documented on YouTube. That's the advantage of modern means of communication, that word gets round fairly quickly, and the Lord is very much present in the cybersphere if one knows how to navigate. So console yourselves, we're not forgotten in the universe. And as regards the angels themselves, we have even their interference coming through on a vocal level. They're to be seen and heard sometimes. There's more than one bits of YouTube where they've actually been heard, even at the consecration. I was listening the other day, one happened in Sicily not that long ago, before Matteo Lagrua died. You can hear the consecration in the background, and as he gets to the end of the consecration of the chalice, he says in Italian, "Do this in memory of me," and you hear this steadily rising chorus of angelic singing in the background. It becomes so powerful they have to put down the tapes when they're listening, and it was sent to the University of Palermo nearby for them to investigate, and the report documented, it came back in print that no known instrument can produce this noise, and no human voice, therefore they recognized objectively it was something inexplicable. So again, the Lord using modern means to speak his mysterious language, and that is what we're up against. Remember, now these angels right now, not only our guardian angels, but when it comes to the consecration, there's a huge choir of angels. We can't hear them, but they're there. Therefore the importance of dignity wherever the sacred mysteries are celebrated, and also our own physical comportment is not indifferent. The angels, they're adoring with face downwards to the ground, but we are sitting. That shouldn't be the case. That's not the case in this group, but it happens. Even in prayer groups, good prayer groups, they can sit and so on very casually for the most important part of the Mass, which is not good. We're presuming on majesty. So in that sense we come, remembering that little children at Fatima were shown how to pray. That angel showed them before Lady appeared. In 1916 already they were shown by precisely an angelic intervention how to pray, and this element of physical prostration was there. God is God, man is man, and angel is somewhere in between. The angel Gabriel from heaven came, his wings as drifted snow, his eyes as flame. All hail, said he, O lovely maiden Mary, most highly favoured Lady, Gloria. For now a blessed mother you shall be, all generations praise continually. Your son shall be Emmanuel, voices foretold, most highly favoured Lady, Gloria. Then gentle Mary meekly bowed her head, to me be as it pleases God, she said. My soul shall laud and magnify his holy name, most highly favoured Lady, Gloria. Of her Emmanuel the Christ was born, in Bethlehem or on a Christmas morn, and Christian folk throughout the world will ever say, most highly favored Lady, Glory.